Hello everyone, welcome back to the domain Podium. This is Ramesh, and today we will talk about QR code payments. We will learn a few things about QR code payment, like what is a QR code, what basic details are embedded on the QR code, how to identify this QR code belongs to which particular card network. Examples are Visa, MasterCard, JCB, Diners, okay. And along with that, we will also cover 3 different transaction scenarios to understand the transaction flow of a QR code based payment. So let's get started. First of all, we will understand what is a QR code. Most of you already know this and you must have seen it, scan it multiple times while making a payment. So QR code is a type of matrix barcode that is used to store and retrieve information. So whenever you scan a QR code with the help of a mobile camera or a mobile application camera, this basically reads certain information from a QR code. There are certain data elements, certain attributes which are embedded on a QR code. So first of all, there is an application ID, AID, to identify this QR code belongs to which card network. It can be Visa, MasterCard or any other card network, right? So that information is already embedded on the QR code, which is being generated by a merchant or any acquiring bank, okay? The other information which is there on the QR code is merchant related, like merchant ID, merchant currency. It can have a transaction amount also. So whenever you scan the QR code with the help of any mobile application, after scanning the QR code, this information is actually transmitted from the QR code to the mobile application, which I said AID, merchant related, transaction related, or a currency code related information, right? So these are some basic information only that we will talk about. Now, in addition to it, you can also understand that the QR code can be in static nature and it can also be dynamic in nature. What exactly it means? You must have seen most of the merchants, I believe you know those who print the QR code and display for any card holder or a customer to scan it for a payment, correct? To make a payment. So this QR code which is printed on a paper is actually static in nature. What it means, any information which has been already embedded, merchant cannot change, cannot further change. It's a static in nature. So if it passes you today, for example, a merchant ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it will continue to pass the same information. Whenever any mobile application or anyone scans the QR code, so it transmits the same information, keeps transmitting the same information to the mobile application. Generally, these kind of QR codes do not have any transaction amount related information printed on embedded on the QR code, because the transaction amount you enter at the time of when you scan the QR code. So this is static QR code in nature. What is dynamic QR code? I think this also, as a user, you must have experienced in bigger merchants, okay, they are generally using a point of sale terminals, right? So the moment you make a payment, they generate a QR code at a runtime. Dynamically, that QR code is generated and displayed on the point of sale screen, right? And then you scan the QR code. So what's the difference in these type of QR code and a static QR code is, like in dynamic QR code, merchant can actually pass the amount, transaction amount information also on the QR code. So when you scan the QR code, you don't have to enter the amount explicitly, on the mobile application. That's the user differences you see in a dynamic or a static QR code. In addition to it, there can be more specific information that goes on QR code. So all card networks, they provide their own specifications for any acquiring bank or merchant to follow those specifications for the QR code generation. But all I can say is the information that I mentioned just now, like AID, merchant name, merchant ID, merchant currency code, transaction amount, these are the basic information that should exist on any QR code in order to process a transaction successfully, because this is the bare minimum information which is mandatory in nature, and every card network specification will include that into their documentations so that acquirer or merchant can use that and generate the QR code accordingly. So this was kind of, a basics of a QR code dynamics, what all informations are there, etc. Now let's understand the notion of transaction. First of all, I want to explain one thing, because industry-wide, some of you must have heard these terms the terminologies like push payment or pull payment, what exactly the meaning of this, right? So let's understand what is the meaning of push payment and pull payment, because when you work on a card-based transaction and a QR code-based transaction, you should also understand which one is the pull payment, which one is the push payment. So when you as a card holder insert a card or tap a card on any point of sale terminal, the transaction is initiated from the merchant device, that is a point of sale terminal which is owned by a merchant or by an acquiring bank, right? So in that case, the transaction goes through all the way from point of sale terminal to the acquirer, then card network and issuer, and they pull the money, they pull the approval, right, for this financial transaction from a cardholder account. So ultimately what it means, the direction of the payment decides that whether it is a push or a pull. In this case, the merchant is pulling the payment from your account, from a cardholder's credit or a debit or prepaid card account, right? So that's why this type of transaction is called as a pull payment. Who is initiating it? Merchant is initiating it. And that's how the payment is getting pulled from your account and getting an approval at the end of day, or probably, once the settlement is done. Once the settlement is done, merchant is getting the money in his account, right? This is pull payment. Whereas in case of push payment, who initiates the transaction? It is the customer who initiates the transaction from its own mobile application. For example, you have an account in any of the issuing bank, you are using that banking application and pushing the payment to the merchant account. So the direction of the transaction is slightly different now. So the transaction will be initiated by the mobile application, which in case of pull payment was getting initiated by the point of sale terminal, right? So in this case, your mobile application will initiate the transaction. Now the mobile application belongs to whom? It belongs to an issuing bank or an issuer, right? Or issuer processor. So the transaction is first submitted to the issuer. They validate their part, like all accounting related, authentication related, whatever is required. Okay, they will do that part. And then in order to credit that or give that approval back to the merchant, they will push this transaction to the card network. Card network will identify this transaction belongs to which acquirer or which merchant. They will accordingly send the transaction to the acquirer. So the flow of the transaction is different in this case. In the case of push payment, customer is pushing the transaction to the issuer, and then from issuer it goes to all the way to merchant and acquirer, and the response comes back to the issuer mobile application, correct? So this is a push payment where customer is pushing the payment to the merchant account. I hope this is clear, the difference between a push and pull. It's a very quick a refresher for us to understand the difference between a push and pull payment. Now let's talk about the typically two, three types of transaction flow of a QR code based payment. Another disclaimer from my side is that in this video, I'm not covering typically a UPI based payment transaction, okay? This is a traditional QR code payment transaction supported by any card network, okay? Card networks examples have already given to you, Visa, MasterCard. So let's not confuse yourself with the UPI based transaction. So in this video, we are not talking about the UPI based transactions. It is card, where the instrument is card, but the mode of payment is the QR code. Okay, that's how you should consider that. And whosoever is walking into the industry, maybe you are part of any bank or a processor, you can try to relate your experience with the help of this video and understand how these QR code based transactions are working. So now let's talk about the three scenarios that I said. Okay, the first scenario is I will not take a name of any bank, but I will say bank A, bank B, and payment network XYZ and ABC. So these four terminology or entities that I will use as a reference. So bank A in all the example is the issuer of the card. Okay, for example, if you are using a credit card, which is the issuer bank or the issuer processor. So bank A I will use as an issuer. Bank B will be the acquirer. If I use card network XYZ will be one such card network. It can be Visa, MasterCard, or Discover, JCB, RuPay, anyone. And card network ABC will be a different card network altogether. Therefore, these four entities names I would be taking in the next few minutes of this session while explaining the three different scenarios. Now let's talk about the first scenario. where the customer of bank A who is scanning a QR code of bank B, means the merchant belongs to bank B, and bank A, who is an issuer bank, the QR code belongs to payment network XYZ, and bank A is already certified issuer or a issuer processor with card network XYZ. So let's please try to understand. You are approaching a merchant who is a customer. Merchant is actually a customer of bank B, which is an acquiring bank, and the merchant displays you a QR code which belongs to payment network XYZ. Okay, so the moment you scan that QR code, the information that we talked about, like the AID, merchant related and transaction, whatever it is, will pass on to the mobile application. So I will be focusing only on the AID here. Okay, so based on the AID, application identifier, which is one of the tag on the QR code, bank A mobile application will identify that this particular QR code follows a specification of card network XYZ. So that's how your issuing bank or a issuing processor will get to know about that this QR code actually belongs to this card network. Now the point that I said just a minute ago, that this bank A is already certified with that card network XYZ. Okay, when I say payment network, card network, all are similar things. Okay, so you should assume that either it is a Visa or MasterCard, whatever it is, right? So what I'm saying is bank A now is already certified with XYZ. This is scenario number one. What happened in this case is, based on the AIT and the information that is embedded on the QR code, bank A will be able to identify this particular QR code belongs to this XYZ card network, and they are already a certified QR code issuer or a processor for that particular card network. So they might be already maintaining a connectivity with this particular card network. So after they identify, they will of course verify the customer. They will do authentication whether customer has sufficient balance or not. If a customer has sufficient balance, everything looks good with the transaction, and they want to process this transaction further to the card network. After all these verifications and checks, validation, etc., the issuer processor, bank A, will forward this transaction to the card network XYZ. Now, because the merchant who was displaying this QR code, their acquiring partner is already a customer of partner or a customer of card network XYZ. Therefore, based on the MID, the merchant related information, they will be able to identify the acquiring bank of that particular QR code. Therefore, the card network XYZ can easily route your transaction to the acquiring bank B now. And bank B already knows that this belongs to this particular merchant, and they will send the notification to the merchant that your transaction is approved or whatever it is. And then acknowledgement comes back to the issuer also, all the way from the card network to the issuer, that transaction has been completed end to end. Therefore, from a transaction flow perspective, you need to understand that when a user of a bank A scans a QR code of a bank B, if both the parties are already certified, because bank B can generate a QR code only if they are certified for that card network, right? Otherwise, they cannot generate. So the question here comes is whether bank A is certified for that card network or the QR code provider or not. That's the important question. So that's why I said in the first case scenario, bank A is already certified, and therefore they are maintaining a connectivity with the card network. They can easily process the transaction, first of all, in their issuing system, take decision on the transaction that yes, the customer account can be debited. Now forward the transaction to card network sends to acquirer sends to merchant, and then finally end-to-end transaction is processed with the help of an acknowledgement back to the issuer, bank A. This is scenario one. Scenario two. In scenario 2, the only difference is bank A, who is the issuer of that particular user, they do not have any certification done with the card network, which means that they are not maintaining a direct connectivity with card network XYZ. This is scenario number 2, but what they are doing is, instead of connecting with respective card network, they are connecting with a third party service provider. It can be any company who basically provides a kind of QR code network, okay? So that bank A can connect with a third-party processor who is certified. For example, there can be one company in a country, given a country. In that country, probably could be possible you are supporting 3, 4 or 5 card networks in that country only, okay? So what it means is that the third party provider will be certified with card network ABC, XYZ or any. So in this case, bank is not certifying or issuer processor is not certifying. Bank A is not certifying. Who is certifying is a third party. So what will happen? The only difference is the moment QR code payment transaction, the moment you scan the QR code, sends the transaction from mobile application to the issuing processor, switch or card management system, whatever you want to call it. So that time the switch will identify this is the AID that I cannot understand. All I can understand is I will do the validation of cardholder authentication and all the monetary checks, etc. And I will forward this transaction to the third party whom I'm connecting with. So they will just simply forward the transaction to the third party. Now it is a responsibility of the third party provider to check the AID, check the information. Okay, the third party will check this particular transaction belongs to XYZ. They will send to the card network XYZ, ABC, whichever it is, because third party is already certified with that, right? This is scenario number 2. The additional step in this one is the transaction all the way goes from mobile application to the issuer processor. From issuer processor it goes to third party it sends to the respective card network, then card network will send to the acquirer and acquirer can also send it to the merchant. This is scenario number 2, which as per my experience I have seen that is possible. Now there can be third and fourth scenario also, but I have not experienced that personally. I have not seen that. That scenario is, for example, the bank A is not connecting with either of those, neither with the card network nor with the not with the third party processor. So the scenario will look like this. Now you're scanning a QR code that belongs to card network ABC. Okay, it doesn't belong to card network XYZ. The moment you scan the QR code, okay, issuer bank application will send the transaction to the switch issuer processor. It will check the AID, will simply fail to identify because they are connecting with XYZ. But they are not able to identify this QR code because they are not connecting with the respective card network. I'm again repeating, I have not seen this, but I could think through this kind of scenario because this is also possible. If any one of you is working in this kind of scenario, probably you reach out to me because I also want to learn more about this scenario. But I'm creating a scenario and situation that yes, this could also be one of the possible transaction flow. So what will happen is bank A will check, they are connecting with only XYZ, but they are not able to identify this QR code which belongs to card network ABC or ADEF or whatever it is. They are not simply able to identify the AID. Therefore, they will still forward this transaction to card network XYZ only because they are connecting with XYZ. So irrespective of whether this QR code belongs to XY, A, B, C or whosoever it is, irrespective of that, they will forward the transaction to the XYZ network. Now, XYZ network probably can also identify, no, this transaction belongs to ABC. They can forward it to ABC and ABC will send it to the acquirer and acquirer will send to the merchant. This is another flow. There are 2 additional hops into this transaction, right? From issuer, A goes to card network XYZ, from XYZ it goes to ABC and from ABC it goes to acquirer and then merchant. So again, this is very hypothetical. I may be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong, but all I'm saying is if anyone is working in this kind of scenario, the third scenario that I mentioned, or if any one of you have seen some more scenarios, probably in my experience, I have seen 2. The first one where I mentioned you, where the XYZ and the bank A is already connected and certified. Second scenario I've seen is where is the third party, which is a digital QR code network provider, and they are connecting all the different card networks or acquirer or merchant, right? This is second scenario which I have personally worked in one of my previous experience. And third one I have not seen, but if one of you or any one of you have worked on the third scenario, I'm happy to have a discussion with you. Please reach out to me through my WhatsApp group and probably we can connect and discuss about it. That's all from my side for today. There can be few more things that we can talk about definitely about the QR code payment, because once an issuer identifies the transaction from the mobile application, they use the respective card network specification in order to forward that transaction to that network, right? It can be an ISO 8583, it can be API based, but what I have seen from my experience is mostly ISO 8583. So the respective issuer will follow that specification, will construct the message and define all the ISO data elements, will form that packet, right, and send it to the card network in that specification. And then it's up to the card network or the third party, whichever specification the issuer is following, they again construct the message and forward it to acquirer and merchant. So of course, as I said, like, yes, there can be so many other things that we can talk about, but for today, that's all I prepared to cover the basic flow of QR code based payment, what is QR code, etc. If you have any question, any further clarity that you want, or you want to share some more knowledge from your side, I'm happy to connect. You can reach out to me via my LinkedIn profile or with the help of my WhatsApp group that I've created. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay connected.